Star quality. I got it. I got this. You got it. You got it. My chart says so. Look at me go. Sun, moon, rising. It's all about timing. It's all about timing. Earthlings. What's it all mean? What's it all mean? Star quality.
What's it all mean? What's it all mean?
Star quality.
Woo. No, dude, really, what does it all mean?
Star quality. I got it. You got it. You got it. Star quality. Star quality. What's up, Star Party people? Welcome back to Star Quality. It is me, Stevie, your host and astrologer, and we are here to talk about this Libra full moon. I am sick as fuck. I mean, I'm like sick with a Q, you know, I'm always like sick, but I'm very sick. I've been sick. I'm actually feeling a little bit better, but I've been feeling pretty sick since I got back from Brazil. So, you know, I'm just rallying here so I can forecast for you. If I've been quiet the last week or so, it's because I was traveling. And I thought I could get ahead on some posts and things, and then I didn't. And that's the Aries rawness energy for you. So please send me your healing vibes. Today is Wednesday, April 1st. And been pretty sick since I got back on Sunday. Brazil, if you don't follow me on socials and things, maybe you only follow me here on Substack, which is starquality.substack.com. But please feel free to join me on Instagram and TikTok. I'm spaghetti_witch, and that's all in the show notes too. So I'm just starting to post some photos and things from my trip to Brazil, and also in my highlights on Instagram, I've saved all the highlights and things from my trip to Brazil. I'm like a story poster on vacay, and then I like to highlight and save because, I mean, one, I just like, for when people are like, hey, where did you go in Brazil or Japan or wherever, I'm like, check my highlights, and you can, if anything looks cool, then, you know, it's probably tagged, or you can ask me and I'll describe it more deeply. So yeah, Brazil. Oh my God, I just feel like I sound disgusting, but you know, if you're here and choosing to accept that disgust, fabulous. I like, sometimes when you're sick, you sound really sexy. I feel like I haven't hit that mark during this sickness. I don't even know exactly what I have. I have some infection, something. I'm coughing up green boogers. I'm really hoping this just chills out soon, but yeah, it's been rough stuff. But, you know, good timing, I guess, is that it kind of hit in when I got back versus while I was on the trip. So gratitude. Gratitude's the attitude. I'm also sparing you any coughs. I'm like muting or pausing the recording, so that's not in there. So it will never get too gross. Hee hee. Brazil was amazing, and it was a very random trip that was kind of planned. Not like, usually when I'm planning a big trip, and to me, you know, leaving the continent is a big trip to me. I did not grow up traveling as a kid, you know, like my family just isn't travel-y, and also like I know traveling is a huge privilege, but you know, sometimes you meet people and like their families went to Europe or did this thing or blah blah blah. Yeah, so you know, all my major international travels have been by my own fruition once I was in my 20s and then into 30s. So anyways, usually I'm like such a planner, like, okay, I plan this out months ahead. I'm doing this big thing. But at the end of the year, and I'm sure my friend Leah, who I went on the trip with, along with some other people, may correct me, but she, you know, this kind of came up as an option. You know, her friends are in a band called TV Girl. And you might have heard of them. They're pretty big. And they really blew up on TikTok in the last few years. Not even that I guess the lore is they didn't even have a TikTok account, but people were uploading their music and using it on the talk. But yeah, so Leah was like, do you want to come with me? Because her boyfriend couldn't come. And I think originally she asked me if I wanted to go to Mexico City with her to see TV Girl play. And I was looking at their lineup because they were doing a whole South America, Central America tour. And then I was like, what about Brazil? It was their last stop too. And then she mentioned, because it's their last stop, they're going to be hanging out afterwards. So there we go. I also had went to, not that I wouldn't have gone back to Mexico City. I went to Mexico City for a month in February 2024 to study Spanish. And a girl I met there, Luisa, was from Rio, and she wasn't in my Spanish class, but she was like in the Spanish school community. You meet all the other students. It was a much more social sort of thing than I had originally planned. I'm sure if you listen back to any old Star Quality episodes from when I was in Mexico, it was interesting also in terms of astrocartography, being like, oh yeah, I was on my Mars line. Why would I think this is restful? I was like out and about, socializing, doing stuff, activities, which was great. But my friend Luisa, she lived in Rio, and she also had mentioned, hey, come to Brazil whenever. So Brazil was sort of planted in my mind. And of course, I've always seen images of it and it looking beautiful. So this was all really planned in like January, to go in March, which for me is like really short, but it worked out. So also like these last few months before leaving has been like, I've been working a day job. I've been doing this. I've been doing readings and events and things. So it's just been crammed. And then like, this was like a proper vacay after, I don't know. When you're like, wow, this is like maybe something only like freelancer people might relate to, but like, there's just usually so much downtime and time off. Like vacations don't often feel like vacations. You're usually just waiting for your next job. This was like I had worked so much January through March. I was like, this is a proper vacay. Like one of those like, oh, I actually need this vacation. I was so happy to not open a laptop for 10 days. So yeah, the first leg of the journey was going to Sao Paulo, where Lollapalooza, Brazil was happening. And that's the festival that TV Girl was playing at, among a bunch of other amazing acts. And got to see, of course, TV Girl. I was pit, front row, barricade for Addison Rae, for Lorde. Oh my God. I got to see Sabrina Carpenter, Chappell Roan. Oh my God. The Chappell Roan, guys. The Chappell Roan child drama was because of this festival, or like centered around this festival. I'm telling you, there was so much crazy amount of celebrity news, pop culture, political stuff. Like the 10 days I was gone was maybe, I feel like, the most news packed 10 days. And it felt like the gossip that just wouldn't stop giving. The Chappell Roan 11-year-old weird gate, the Lindy West poly drama. It was interesting because I feel like nowadays news items are so flash in the pan. Like, we care about a lot of things for maybe 24, max 48 hours, and then we move on. And I feel like a lot of the news stories that happened while I was in Brazil were like, they just kept unfolding. Even the Paul, what's her name? The Taylor Frankie Paul. I keep calling her Paul Frankie, like the monkey design of like the aughts. The Taylor Frankie Paul Bachelorette cancellation, like, the news comes out and then a video comes out and then this, and that felt like the same thing that was happening in the news. So just flagging astrologically, that week of, that mid-March to end of March timeline we had, where the sun was conjunct with Saturn. We were in this Sun-Saturn conjunction and had a Saturn gazemi. It was interesting. It was like, it's just a reminder of like Saturn's durability and that things stick and last with Saturn. And that kind of just felt like with this sort of news or quote truth telling, like, like there was like a lot of outing and a lot of like attempts and not even attempts, like what's the word, like attempts and oh my fucking god, I have a brain, I'm sick. Oh my god, it's so simple what I'm trying to say. Like attempts and mission accomplished of cancelizations, like where people are just sort of, yeah, like trying to get to the bottom of the truth and what this really means. And yeah, so like, even though of course I was not on my laptop doing any work while I was gone, I was definitely scrolling up a storm because there was just too much crazy good gossip. And, you know, I'm a fiend for that kind of stuff. So the pop culture news was popping and I was just like, damn, being quite fed on my ways away. What's interesting too is my last time I traveled, I did a solo trip. I traveled just myself. My friend eventually met me up at the end, but I was, you know, gone for 3 weeks by myself. And then this trip, I was on like a group trip, which I hadn't been on. Like, I don't know if I've ever been on an international group trip. I've been on group trips, like weekend trips, you know, with friends or like my bachelorette back in the day. But like groups are hard usually for me. I'm an 11th houser. I love groups, but I mean, just the logistics, you know, we've all been to probably a dinner where there's 12 people, right? And you're like, oh shit, how do we do this where it's not hell? So there's like a lot of firsts too. Like this trip, I was also sort of following the lead of my friend and joining her with the band. And it was like actually really fun way to travel in this sort of relinquished, like I wasn't really in charge, which was fun. And it felt very final days of Uranus and Taurus too, just to not be, you know, I don't know. Back when I was younger, I was such a way much more of a micromanager, travel planner. Now I'm very like tentpole activity. Like I want to do 2 iconic things a day. And one could just be a food I really want to try, right? Like I really want to go to this beach and I want to eat this dish. And everything else that happens in between is like cherry on top. But yeah, Sao Paulo is a major, major city. It's not on the beach, so it's very skyscrapery. Anthony Bourdain described it as like if New York threw up on Los Angeles. Very accurate. The traffic was unlike anything I've ever seen before. Like 40 minutes to go, like a few miles, just wild. Put LA to shame as someone who lives in Los Angeles. But Sao Paulo ended up being quite like a hidden gem to me. Like it grew on me, and maybe because I had low expectations, because I was like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna go see the festival. Again, anything else is cherry on top. If you couldn't tell, I love putting my bar on the floor for travel, because I just think people's expectations with travel can be so high, especially in the like Instagram versus reality sort of context of travel. Like travel is hard. Travel is beautiful and travel is really fun, but travel is like a lot of work, and I am very conscious of like respectful traveling as best as one can. You know, in Brazil, my group was a little surprised to find out, but I did find this out from my own TikTok research before, is, you know, Brazil, not many people speak English, and that's cool. That makes sense. Luckily, since I speak some Spanish, it helped me sort of integrate, because it's similar. Of course, I know that people there don't speak Spanish, but a lot of people grow up, you know, the first language they learn outside of Portuguese is Spanish, because all the other countries around them speak Spanish. But yeah, the festival was like super, super fun. I mean, it's fun to go as like a VIP person, you know, that is my humble, not so humble brag. It was that was the other part of like, why not go? Because it's like, how often am I going to get this invitation, this experience, especially since, you know, Brazil is a huge country and it's a big trip, and to go with like my best friend and then also a group of people, and to go see music and have this experience, just like, I mean, amazing. Sao Paulo is my sun. Let me pull up the astrocartography. Okay, yeah, this is what I thought. Sao Paulo is my sun midheaven line, which I was like, oh, that's surprising to me. I guess when I first got there, I was like, I immediately was like, did not know if I liked the city or not, because it's just so big and demanding and not easy, you know, and I'm a Taurus sun, so like I do like some comfort and ease, but I'm curious now, like if there's like work for me there now, because, you know, that sun midheaven can definitely be about your career goals and growth in terms of like whatever your sun intentions are. And if you're listening to this, like, what are we talking about? Astrocartography is a study, a speciality in astrology where we take the astrological energy of different places and look where different planets have different influence, sort of like with relocation astrology. So it's like if I was born in Sao Paulo, I would have had my sun, on my midheaven. So it's factoring in the moment I was born, where the planets were and what they were doing at that time, and how that would have, changed or brought out the different planetary energy in me and in you. You can look at your own astrocartography chart. So yeah, spent some days in Sao Paulo. Then we went to Rio. And I mean, Rio is maybe the most beautiful city I've ever seen. Rio is, just the beaches, the people, the mountains, just everything. It's everything. The rainforest. We went to the Tijuca rainforest and did a Jeep tour. If you do ever go to Rio, I have an amazing guide for you. So please let me know, because I would love to connect you to him, because he was just a star. Rio is on my Pluto IC, also kind of close to my Venus midheaven line, which is interesting because when I went to Japan in fall of 2023, that is also my same lines as Brazil, but flipped. We can get into it in a reading one day if you'd like, but basically, these lines are going to be close-ish to each other, but what house they're in is going to be dictated on this map, like especially, the hemisphere flip or which side of the world they're on. So for Rio, it's my Pluto IC, Venus midheaven. And then in Japan, it's flipped. It's my Pluto midheaven, Venus IC. And when I went to Japan, I had this feeling just of like, oh, I could spend 6 months here. Like, I feel really connected here. It feels easy. Like, I'm just into this. But then it's interesting because I have this Pluto Venus together, because if you read about Pluto lines in astrocartography, you're going to freak yourself out because you're going to think you're going to die there, or, etc. And I think just Pluto just really comes back to that transformation energy. Like, this is the place to go reflect on what you want, what you're, for me, this trip in 2026 has just been going really nonstop, and hasn't been a lot of time to pause and be like, what do I want? Like, what really is like my theme for this year? And, my birthday's coming up, so I think I'll have a little more in tune with that as I reset my intentions. But also to, going to these places that really can transform like your values with Venus and Pluto, just truly like what you stand for and your legacy. Like, I think that's where Pluto and Venus can come together. I was born in a Venus-Pluto opposition, so that's why these lines are always going to be connected at different points of the different angles of the chart. Again, if you're like, lady, what the fuck are you talking about? We can get into this in a chart reading. So if you like, I keep like going back and forth on offering astrocartography readings. Maybe it's an imposter syndrome. Maybe it's just like, I don't know, ... But also a lot of the folks who've done them with me, I've had a lot of really great experience and outcome with it, and like encouragement. And yeah, maybe I need to talk that out here too, because, it's interesting. It's like before I went on this trip, and I'm definitely going to do a separate post on this because I think it was just something that was really affecting me, was I was just seeing so many astrology posts, fear-mongering posts about traveling during March, and like, literal images of like plane crashes and terrorist attacks, and like all these astrologers being like making these really grandiose statements that like bad things are going to happen. And I like truly went into a little like astro panic. I'm like, should I cancel my trip? Should I do this? And yeah, I'm like kind of mad at myself. I like got suckered into like the fear mongering that a lot of astrologers are doing. And I think it's smart to be like informed, and there's like real stuff happening in the world, obviously, with like Iran and, Palestine. Like this is like not a, it's not necessarily peaceful time. But this idea, for the average Joe, that they're going to experience tragedy at any given moment and they shouldn't leave their house, it's just like makes me really mad at like what astrology and astrologers and these fucking assholes are like doing right now with astrology. I also had like a really bad reading before I left. I think I probably, if you're my close friends, you probably saw, and I don't necessarily need to name this person, I think, but like they literally like, your dad might die and this and that. And I was just like, I'm just like blown away. Like, I don't know. When I went to astrology school, you do have to take an ethics course. And I just think there's a lot of people who are lacking in ethics and bedside manner and tact and blah, blah, blah. And this is the hard part with astrology because there really is no like ethics. I mean, I guess there's like some committees, but like no actual board that can revoke your astrology license, you know? So yeah, this is a very Libra full moon rant to go into about like literal, you know, like legalities and justice and like due processes and things like that. But to recap, Brazil's amazing. 10 out of 10 would recommend. Can't wait to go back. Everyone who I met there, locals, were very upfront about how poor everyone is. So, you know, I got to obviously experience a very different Brazil than a lot of people are living in. But I also really appreciated the honesty and straightforwardness of a lot of people that I met in Brazil. And yeah, I mean, Brazil is just stunning. If you get the chance to go, I recommend. It's so cool. Sao Paulo can be a lot. It's a big fucking city and you're not getting the beach vibe, but there's a lot of more Brazil that I would really love to go see. And yeah, just feeling really grateful. You know, I was meeting a lot of people too in Brazil who've, you know, never even left, you know, never like travel is a privilege. And like, I think that's the Pluto IC stuff I'm also taking back is like, it's like, yeah, there's just so many people, you know, like our host, our guide for the Tijuca Rainforest tour, you know, really wanted to go visit this Home Alone house in Chicago, which is down the street from my parents' house. And, you know, he was like, well, the currency is fucked. Like, I'm never going to be able to leave here. And, you know, he lives in a favela and like 3 million of the 6 million people in Rio live in favelas, which is basically their like shanty town. I'm just going to say neighborhoods. I mean, essentially like ghettos, you know, like, and was because, you know, Brazil was the last most recent country in modern times to, you know, they've had slavery the longest. So like this was where people had to go. So I'm very grateful to have learned a lot of history while I was there, you know, because it's so, especially in Rio, it's so beachy and touristy and vacay and drinks on the beach. And it was, I mean, God, the beach culture was fantastic. But then also, you know, there's all these people making things run behind the scenes and there's history and reasons to why that is. So anyways, we love our informed educational travelers as best we can, you know, be a respectful human being, especially same thing with astrocartography. You know, your lines might encourage you to go somewhere, but do your research, be a conscientious traveler, know if you're welcome, and and try your best to be a global citizen and don't be a douche. Okay, that was really long. My throat hurts. I got to get into the astrology. How am I going to do this? I'm going to find a way. So this Libra full moon is happening on April 1st, 2026 at 7:12 p.m. Pacific time. Adjust for your time zone. I'm going to put the chart in the show notes so you can take a look and see where all the planets are. The rising sign is going to be, you know, depending on your time zone. So adjust accordingly. For our Los Angeles chart here, it is a Libra. I mean, it's literally an exact Libra rising with the exact moon. Like, you'll see the image. So that's pretty interesting. It also can kind of symbolically maybe give a vibe check of what, you know, your town, your area, like what might be the flavor of until the next lunation ahead. Also, this is our first full moon that is not an eclipse. We had a new moon on March 18th, and now we are in our full moon. So we're really out of that eclipse energy, and now we've been in our Aries season, in our Aries time. And so not that things are really going to necessarily slow down. I do think April is a relatively, I mean, God, I hesitate to say anything's calmer. This moment is like a little calmer. We are going to have we keep having these parade of planets, these planets that just keep staying in the same sort of stellium cluster. And in like a week or so, once we get into more mid-April, we're going to have so many planets in Aries, including Mars. It's just going to be a lot of action-oriented energy. And because we are in such a time of a lot of violence and war, coming back to like fear-mongering stuff. I mean, it's a little loud about that sort of thing. I just would be surprised if that is like, if it doesn't mean that there's more continued conflict. Now, what I do think is really interesting, and it's been, I think, playing out quite literally right now, but also astrologically, is, as we get more into this Aries energy, and we're going to have this big Aries stellium, yes, this is ripe for conflict, but it also feels self-inflicted conflict, because Aries can and is so much about the self. And I mean, so much of what is happening in the geopolitics of right now, especially, since so much is being instigated and activated by the United States and Israel, is like only biting them back, is only making, politicians less popular, is only increasing costs and things. And I think we're just going to see more of ourselves shooting ourselves in the fucking foot, truthfully, is the big Aries cluster energy that is coming up. And of course, there's always going to be innocent bystanders, which sucks. But I think a lot of this is really going to be almost like a self-undoing sort of war that's ahead, because it's already been doing that. And, this Libra full moon really feels like both coming together and coming apart. Like there's some things that I think are going to really bring certain people and certain groups further connected and new alliances, but then also isolating other groups of people or, countries or associated groups or whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to break down this lunation. I'm going to get into the aspects that are being made to the sun and moon first, and then I'm going to go over the rest of the aspects after the paywall. So if you're new here, there's always going to be free stuff here on Star Quality. I'm going to go over, like I said, the aspects that are being made to the sun and moon, and then I'm going to go over the remaining aspects of this chart that give us the full picture of what's happening, what's the energy of now, and how to work best with this full moon. And that is only for my paid subscribers. So if you would like to upgrade your subscription to the third space, that is what I call my group of supporters of, this is a user supported platform. This is an indie podcast. This is made and self-produced and hosted and researched by me, Stevie. So if you would like to, for the cost of buying me a coffee once a month, for $7.77 a month, because that's how much coffees are probably going up based on what we're seeing. And then, it gets taxed and everything and blah, blah, blah. But for the cost of buying me a coffee, you can support this platform and get all this information, have access to the user chat and all the paywall things. So please consider upgrading your subscription. But for now, we're going to get into the part of this chart breakdown that is for everyone. So continue on. Okay. So a full moon, of course, is when the sun and moon are in opposite signs. And so we have, of course, it's Aries season, and we have the Libra full moon. So this Libra full moon is at 12 degrees, as is the sun, 12 degrees and 21 minutes. Let's start with the aspects being made to the moon first. Of course, it's always going to be in opposition of the sun. So we're really, a reminder of what full moons are in terms of an opposition, right? And the symbology of sun opposite moon is very much like almost like head opposite heart. We're taking away the conscious identity and the subconscious identity. So, a lot of times when I meet full moon babies, a lot of times they might appear, one way. People think, oh, you come off really, extroverted, and then they're like, oh, I'm really, an introverted person, or like to stay in or do this thing. And, or their feelings might not always match what they're doing in the world, where like new moon babies are very like hard on the sleeve. What you see is what you get. And that can also be influenced by other planets and aspects that are being made. But I do think of it as a time to sort of put our head and heart on two different shelves and think about really what we what is working for us and what's not. And that's why full moons are connected to releasing energy. Where in the sun and moon come together, and a new moon, it's like their head and heart comes together. And it's like, no, I know I want to do this thing. Like, let's move forward and go for this. So the big aspect that is being made to the Libra moon, and it's also being made to the sun, is this. They're both squaring. So the sun is squaring Jupiter and the moon is squaring Jupiter. So it's making this big T square to Jupiter. So the area of contention in this chart is Jupiter. And Jupiter is not typically an area of contention because Jupiter is our planet of abundance and generosity and good faith. But there is this square that is happening with Jupiter. And that's why it also is pointing to sort of this coming together, coming apart. Jupiter's in Cancer, which is also about like family, and it's like groups sort of in a different way. Like I think with groups, we often think of Aquarius or even Libra. Or Gemini, like people. But I think Cancer can also be quite connected to who we align with and like who we can, that's my family, that's my squad, those are my people. And so Jupiter, the sun is squaring Jupiter, the moon is squaring Jupiter. The area of relief can be where we hard look at Jupiter. And, when we have a hard look at Jupiter, it's like, where's Jupiter overindulging, overdoing? And I think this idea that, a lot of us are going to have to learn that we're not all on the same ride. We don't all think the same way. We might have, it might be really getting real about our relationship goals or our personal goals, and really stepping away from any distractions, or false promises, or like this idea that you have to wait for something in order to get this other thing. This Jupiter, Jupiter square is like, can maybe signal that we've been maybe giving too much away. And I think that's been the Jupiter Cancer theme on the more, lower end, has been like, where maybe we relying on people or things or places that aren't reliable. And maybe just we know them and they're nostalgic and we've been on that ride before. But what's the phrase? It's like, you got to go for a more unfamiliar heaven than a familiar hell. And I think like if everything's been feeling too, this is all cardinal, right? So like there is something new that's needing to be started. And I think it feels like very like, what are you waiting for? I think for some of you, if it's like, oh, well, I have to do this before I have a kid. It's like, well, who says who? Or I can't do this, or I'll never own a house, or this, like, like there is like a little bit of like, why are you squashing the Jupiterian big picture, big dream sort of deal? Like, why are you trying to fit into like a really modest version of what you're hoping for? And I think too, being around people or, with a partner or a job or whatever, that is also in support of that really grand pursuit. It feels like someone like isn't holding up their end of the bargain or something. Or maybe there's been like a plan that's been made with like your family members, or I don't know, like this whole like path that you've been waiting to do. And the key word is like waiting, and like some things just need to get started. And I think, if you've been, having moving plans or family planning, or I just keep coming back to like the family thing. Cause like the Libra is like partnerships, the Cancer is like family, and then the Aries is like the self. And there's just like some order in which things are happening that are just not making sense. And so like that's where it needs like a really maybe tough cardinal conversation of like, how are we going to do this? Like, and literally start something. And I think, I don't know, maybe this is like the woo superstitious girl in me. I feel like once you just start doing something, things happen. Wow, hot take. But even like, like as a freelancer, as someone who like, works for myself and freelances for companies or does events for astrology things, like it's like I know if I like book a trip, for example, and that's when I'll get booked a big thing. So like sometimes it's like, I don't know, just plan for what you want and make it flexible, and like then you might see, the things you've been quote waiting for start to appear. There's another aspect being made to Jupiter, but I'm going to talk about that later. On the flip side, the sun is, the other aspect being made to the sun is a conjunction with Saturn. It's wide. Saturn's at 5 degrees, But Saturn is there. And so Saturn and the sun are together. And this comes back to our discipline and self-discipline. Again, if you want it bad enough, you're going to do it. You're going to start. You're going to go for it. Like, there's really like just no more room for excuses or blaming things or systems or society or capitalism. It's like, yes, obviously this all sucks, but we're all working through the same system. And of course, tons of people with advantages and upper hands and nepotism. Sure. Like, that aside, working with what you can do, this is really like the time to give everything you have. And especially like this April is just so much Aries energy. And yes, we might see that in a kind of global kicking yourself, self-conflict sort of thing, but also in a like, now is the time. I mean, this too, like on a vein level, can really be a time to reinvigorate your health and fitness and getting in tune and in touch with your body. And again, it doesn't mean you have to like go on Ozempic or be stick skinny, but it can just mean like if there's just constantly excuses for neglecting yourself, like again, Aries is just so honest. It's just like, it's okay to be like, damn, I just fell off. I was just lazy as fuck. And telling friends or like letting people know like what you need in order to get back to feeling more like yourself, like an honesty in what is the barrier, you know, because Saturn can be obstacles and blockades. So like, what is blocking you? I mean, for me, I need to declutter. Like, I need to simplify. I need to declutter. I feel like I look at my clothes or stuff and I'm like, that is like a younger version of me, and that is fine. Like, I'm ready to enter this new era of like definition. And yeah, like I think for all of us, it's like, what do we really want? What's blocking it? And what are we going to do about it then? Okay, there's so many other aspects being made, and I'm going to get into them right now, but now it's time for the paywall, baby. So if you would like to continue listening to this episode, please upgrade your subscription and join the paid tier, the third space. And there's also a 7-day free trial if you want to get down like that and see how it goes for you. I really appreciate you listening thus far. I will see the rest of you on the other side of this paywall. Have a great full moon, and we're going to get into the rest of these transit things. We have a new Venus move that happened too in Taurus. A lot has shifted. So we'll keep going right now. See you there.